Hello, good day. Funke Oyende here. Today we are making a curtain. We are making a full length curtain and we'll be using a thick fabric, and the design we are making is pinch pleated or pencil pleated heading curtain. That's what we are making. You can also call it a drape. If you don't want to say curtain, you can say drape. So this is the fabric I'm going to be using, and the fabric is about 110 inches long. So it's longer than the window where I want to use it. So I have to reduce it because some fabrics, since if it's a cotton fabric, some of them have long length, longer than what you need. So what you have to do is to reduce the length to what you actually need. So this is my fabric, and I will have to reduce it. It's 110 inches long, which is okay, and you can see it's thick. So as a result of that, I may omit the lining. I may not use lining for my cutting, but if you like, you can still line it all the same. And you can see the selvage of my cutting. The selvage is the woven edge, the way it came from the factory. You know, some curtains have decorative selvages, so this is the selvage on the other side. So you see, definitely I will have to hem this selvage because it's not decorative. But if your curtain has decorative selvage, you may not have to hem it. So all I'll need to do, once you have taken the measurement of your window, my window is 90 inches long. So I will measure my 90 inches and I will now remove the excess. So that's what I'm going to do. So this is 60, and I'll add another 30 inches. And of course, we're going to add allowance for hemming. So this is the 90 inches length. So I'll be adding 5 extra inches for the hemming at the bottom of the curtain. That brings our measurement to 95, and I'll be adding another 1 inch for hemming it at the top. That is 36 inches. So I'll be cutting 96 inches and I'll be removing the rest. So I'll just notch that point, that my 96 inches point. Then I'll bring the two edges together so I can mark that same point at the other side and remove the excess. So that's my notching. Okay, so this is my notching here. So I will now remove this excess. So let me do that. Okay, so I've removed the excess. This is the excess. So this is what I'll be using for my curtain. So what I'll do next is to start sewing the curtain. So since I'm not going to line it, now this is where I removed, this is the part I removed the excess from. So this is going to be the top of the curtain. So I will only need to hem the two sides. I will double hem this side, double hem the other side, and I will also hem the bottom of the curtain. One other thing that I need to explain to you is how to determine the width of fabric you will cut for your curtain. So if my window is just about 40 inches wide. So my window is 40 inches wide. Now I want to use a fullness ratio of 1.5 or 2 or 3. It depends on how full you want your curtain to be. So if I'm using a fullness ratio of 1.5. That means I will multiply my 40 inches times 1.5. So but if I want a fullness ratio of 2, I'll multiply my 40 inches by 2, which brings it to 80 inches. If I want a fullness ratio of 3, I'll multiply my 40 inches by 3, which gives me 120 inches. So you decide how wide you want your cutting to be, and then you cut out the width. So now this is the width I am using for my cutting. I'm using a fullness ratio of 1.5. So what I'll do next is just to hem the two sides of my curtain, and then hem the bottom, and then later I will come to hem the top of the curtain, and I'll be fixing in my heading tape at the same time. So let's start the sewing process. So I'll just fold my curtain the first time about 1 inch wide, then I'll fold it the second time, and you can pin it in place so that it doesn't shift. You pin it down like that, and then start hemming. You do so for both sides of your curtain. So now I've hemmed the two sides. So we're now left with the bottom of the curtain. So I go to the bottom. Remember, I made allowance of 5 inches for hemming of the bottom, because the selvage is not a decorative one, so we have to hem it. So now my 5 inches, I'm going to hem 1 inch out of the 5. I'm going to turn it in 1 inch, then I'll now turn it in the second time by 4 inches. So I'll be having a wide hemming. So I have 4 inches here. Then you pin it in place and stitch. So that's my 4 inches. Then I pin and do it. Let me complete the pinning down. So after pinning up everything, it's time to stitch. So I'll be stitching the hemming of the lower part of the curtain in place. And while stitching, you make sure you stitch very close to the edge of your fold. It should be at the edge of your fold exactly. So after stitching that bottom part, we now go to the top of the curtain. Go back to the top to hem the top, and at this time we are going to use our heading tape for the top of the curtain. So I'm going to fold 1 inch in, 1 inch folded in. Then I'll grab my heading tape and fold a little bit, about 1 inch, and fold it inside to the back of it, so that it is neat, so that the rough edges do not show at the edge. Then I'll place it on top of the curtain and stitch in place along the dotted line on the heading tape. So when I get to the other end, so I have this extra length of heading tape, so I'm able to have some allowance to fold in also at the other end, so as to hide the rough edges before I finish it off. So as I finish stitching the first line, I will go back to the beginning, and then I'll stitch down from this side. It will be wrong for me to come from the other side. The two of them, I have to stitch along the same direction. The two lines must be stitched in the same direction. You cannot stitch this first one in this direction and then stitch the other one in the other direction. The heading tape will not be smooth. It will, it will be twisted. It will not stay well. So for you to have a properly finished cotton heading, you have to stitch along the same direction. So after that, it's time to begin to pinch pleat my cotton. So we come back to the top here, the heading, and we now actually, by the time we gather this heading, you can pick the 3 cords and use it to gather this top of the cotton. So once you pull it, it will begin to gather. So you'll be able to gather it from both sides. So you can see that as you gather it, it has formed your pencil pleats. It has pleated the top of the cotton, and you already have your pencil pleat formed. But if you like, maybe you don't want just this pencil pleat, you want like double pinch pleat or triple pinch pleat, you can, leave it straight like that and pinch with your finger. Like you pinch the first one and pinch another, so already you have to double pinch pleat. This is the first, this is the second. So what you have to do is to get a thread and needle. Use your thread and needle and tack this in place. You can tack it from the top here, tack it, so after tacking very well, tie it off and also tack it at the bottom of the heading tape, because we are tacking it at the point, the top, the beginning and the end of the heading tape. So you tack it at the other end also, so as to keep the 2 pleats in place. So after tacking it well, you cut off, so you have a double pinch pleat. So you just continue to pinch the top at equal distance. You make sure you maintain equal distance between the pleats, and then you tack. And if you want triple pinch pleats, so instead of 2, you add the third one before you tack. So you now have triple pinch pleats. So that's how you do and finish your pleating. So after pleating the entire width of the cotton, so it's time to hang our cotton. And of course, because of this, we cannot pass our rod through the casing, so we cannot do that. So what we can do is to use our hooks. You can use your hook, whatever kind of hook you have. These are hooks, so you can just put your hook in the pockets, any of the pockets. Maybe if you want the lower one or the middle one or the top one, there are 3 pockets there, 3 rows of pockets. So any of the steps you want to use, so just insert your hook, and then you will now, so after inserting all your hooks, you can see this design will be very conspicuous if you use a plain fabric for your cotton. the pinch pleat, double pinch or triple pinch pleat will be more conspicuous. So you just get your rod, you thread in your rings into your rod, and then you will put in your hooks into the holes in the rings, and that is how you are going to hang your curtain. So you can use this pinch pleated, this double or triple pinch curtain. You can use it with rod. You can also even use it with track. So this is how you're going to just thread everything into rings like this. So you have to use it with rings, and then you rod, and you will now hang it. So this is how you go about installing this kind of curtain. So after you thread everything inside your rod and your ring this way, you'll be able to hang. So like I said, you can use it with rod like this. You can also use it with track. So thank you very much for this. I'll see you in another class. Bye for now.